Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Summit Sam, aka Low Gear. Today we're discussing things AT as usual. These are my personal experiences from my southbound Sobo. For those of you who may not be familiar with that term, AT through hike of 2023. I finished in November and I had started in June on top of, well, I guess I didn't really make it to the top of Catan. Beside the point. Anyway, I did make it eventually. But what I wanted to discuss today was a topic I don't see a whole lot of out there because most people who hike the AT tend to be solo, or at least a lot of the through hikers. There's not a lot of information about there, a lot of information out there about partner hiking. Now, I hiked with my partner. We've been married for now 26 years. So we have a long history together. But if you're planning to go hiking with a friend, whether it's your spouse, a partner, significant other, a parent, a child, a relative, a friend, whatever have you, there's definitely a few things to consider before you head out. And I kind of wish I had known some of these before I went out. We learned them along the way, and it wasn't a big deal, but like I said, we have 26 years of experience with marriage, so we were kind of used to dealing with problems as they come up. If you're new to hiking with someone or just being with someone for that amount of time, 24/7, you might not be so familiar with these tactics. So, let's get started. The first one is that you both really want to hike the AT. Now, you both may want to say, yes, of course we do, but make sure you really do. Because Jeff said he was really keen on hiking the AT, and it didn't take long for him to realize that he wasn't so keen on it. And of course, you may not even decide that until you get on it. But what we did have in place before we got started was we had a plan in case one of us didn't want to hike or got injured or for some reason couldn't finish the hike. So we had a plan in place. Our plan, and this will be obviously different for everybody, was that whoever couldn't finish or didn't want to finish would support the other person in their finishing if they truly wanted to finish too. Now, Jeff early on figured out he wasn't keen on the type of through hiking we were doing, and so after about 2 months, he went and got our van and supported me through hiking. He did the whole through hike as well, but just in a different fashion. And that worked really well for him, and it worked really well for me. But that wasn't how we started off, and that wasn't what the original intention was. Another little thing I learned very quickly on. Now, if you've been watching my videos, you will know that there is a sizable height difference between Jeff and myself. I'm 5'3.5", and he's 6'2". So chances are likely, and we've hiked together many times prior to this hike, but we always kind of hiked together. And in our heads, that was the assumption, we would hike together. But his hiking speed is so much faster than mine. And I just was not able to keep up, and he was getting frustrated. So he would hike ahead, and then we'd meet up later. So be aware that your hiking speeds may not be the same, and that's okay. Plan that that's the case, and be aware that you probably won't be hiking together, but to make plans as to where you'll meet up. Like, we would sometimes plan to meet up at lunchtime, depending on when we parted ways, or we would plan to meet up at a campsite at the end of the day. And he would usually get there clearly well before me because I was a slow hiker. That's why my trail name is Low Gear. I have one speed, and that was good. It worked for me, and that's just how it worked. That being said, I was the one who had the GPS and the maps on my phone. Jeff did not. But he was a good navigator, so he didn't get lost too often. Not to say that he didn't, but if you both suck at navigation, you should probably each have your own navigation system. I mean, you should anyway. But, whether or not you want a paid version or whatever have you, just make sure that if either of you do get separated, that you both can find your way to where you need to go without having to worry on the other person, because that is a problem. I got lost a lot. Not insanely lost, but I definitely found some things that were not on the trail, like a few plane crashes that weren't meant to be found right off the trail. You will find definitely one of them on the through hike, but there was one in the top of New Hampshire. Anyway, if you watch the video, you'll see me getting lost. But needless to say, you should have a form of navigation. Now, along with each having your own GPS, if you're going to be sharing equipment is another topic. So Jeff and I, clearly we shared a tent, first aid equipment, and a few other items. And you have to determine who's carrying what. Now for me, our tent was carried by Jeff. I didn't carry a tent. I did carry an emergency bivvy in case we got separated and I did need some form of shelter. That's just those little tiny packets. They're really a kind of a one-use only type of dealie. And they're quite lightweight, but I still had some form of protection in case we didn't meet up, because you just never know what's going to happen. Now, we both had our cell phones on us. I had the SOS beacon. Jeff did not. So, you know, you do have to determine who's going to carry what and be okay with who's got what. So those are things to think about. Definitely Jeff could carry more weight, so hence the reason why he had the tent. I was more likely to get injured, so I carried the first aid kit. And I think I did get, well, no, I didn't really get too much. I had a lot more scrapes and bumps than he did, let's put it that way. But I'm clumsy and I'm known for that, so that was part of the reason for me taking the first aid kit. Another really important topic is on the AT, you make all sorts of small decisions every day on all sorts of different topics. And because you're going to be hiking with someone, you're going to be sharing these decisions. They will not always line up. So you have to be okay with making compromises. Like I said, Jeff and I have been married for ages, so we were really good at that. But if this is new to you, you need to be okay with sometimes going, okay, you know what? They need an extra day off, or they want to do less miles, or I'm just going to be waiting around a lot longer. Just, you know, be aware that there's going to be things that you will have to compromise, and you've got to be okay with making those kinds of changes on the fly. As well, if you do hike together for sections, because Jeff and I did, certainly for water crossings and whatever, we would always be together, or any particularly sketchy hiking areas, which, you know, I mean, we didn't hurt ourselves, but if we had, they would have been pretty bad. So we kind of planned that ahead of time, and we hiked with each other for those. So those types of things are important. But when you do hike together, you know, are you both talkers? Are you both wanting to be quiet? Or, you know, just be aware of the other person's hiking style. Because I would hike with some people sometimes, people I met on trail, and they would hike my speed for a while, and they would want to talk, and that's okay, but some of them would talk a lot. I'm not a big talker. I like to hike by myself in the quiet. So I found that a bit irritating, and, you know, it was fine. They wanted some company and whatnot, and I was fine with that for short periods of time. But I wouldn't have liked that for long periods of time if that's not my personality. So be aware of that, that sometimes how you hike and how you like to hike might be different than the other person, or have different expectations than the other person. So just be clear on those types of things before you hike. Even if you do shakedown hikes, you might not even come to that point where you realize it, or it may just change on the trail. So, you know, just something to keep in mind. And for those of you who aren't experienced being with someone 24/7 all the time, be aware that you will be. And sometimes you're going to need space from the other person, and that's okay. You know, if you do hike separate speeds and one person's ahead of each other all the time anyway, you're probably getting that space. But sometimes you might not be. So there would be days that Jeff and I would take an extra day off or something. And yeah, we'd be in the same hotel room, but we weren't really, interacting with each other. We would just be kind of doing our own thing, and that's okay, because we needed to be away from each other, but we weren't really away from each other, so that's okay. Not everything has to be sunshine and roses and, you know, experiencing and laughing everything together. It's just sometimes you need to step away from each other. That being said, you also need to be prepared for when you have a really bad day. And I mean, that goes the same for solo hiking too, right? I mean, when you have a bad day, you have a bad day. So if one person's having a bad day and the other person is not, you know, just have some plans for that. For us, if we were having a bad day, for example, if you've watched my videos, when we did the Grayson Highlands, and the Balds past that, it was cold, it was windy, I was wet, I was not having a good time. And so we made to go to hotels, because we could do that. And it made it infinitely better and more enjoyable. So, you know, just plan to have something in place for when you have bad days. That being said, money is a big thing. Do you each have the same amount to spend? Is one person, you know, going to have to be cheaper than the other? You have to kind of keep in mind how much money you're planning to spend, what your spending habits are, what types of things you like to do versus the other person. For Jeff and I, it was pretty easy. Like, we're married, so we kind of know each other's spending habits. But if you're not that familiar with the other person's spending habits or how much they have, those are definitely things you need to talk about. Because you don't want one person to run out of money before the other person, or one person to want to go to more hotels or hostels and you can't afford to. And then, you know, then what happens? Okay, so on another note, one of the things that made traveling with a partner a lot nicer and fun is, one, you always have someone to talk to and you don't get quite as lonely on trail, but you can break up the camp routines and chores. Jeff and I would frequently split them up. For example, he would go fill the water jug up because he had the big platypus with the bag, which would hold tons of water, and I would set up the tent. So we each, and we've always kind of done that. We've just always split up our chores. So kind of just have a plan in mind, or you'll figure it out as you go. But splitting up chores is nice, just like splitting up gear weight, so you don't have to pack it all. It's nice. The last topic to kind of discuss is, at the end of the day, if that one person decides that they don't want to hike and you're left hiking solo, you have to be okay with that. So, you know, at the end of the day, you may want to hike with someone, and it may even be your partner. And they may decide at the last minute, you know what, I can't do this. I need to go back home, or maybe they actually really do need to go back home for some reason. But you need to be okay with, if you really want to finish this hike, that you're able to do it solo. I'm really glad I had Jeff the whole way, but I was prepared to do it solo, and I would have done it that way because I was determined to hike, regardless whether or not he was with me. But I am really glad I had a partner who did hike with me. So it is a really good experience to have someone to share things with. It does reduce the loneliness. It's nice to have someone to share costs with, and, you know, especially for things like resupply, you can buy the bigger box and split it in two, and there are lots of benefits to hiking with a partner. But, you know, as long as you keep those things in mind, where you're splitting decision making, you're splitting possibly gear, you know, you have to be aware of money habits and all of those things. So if you can have those frank discussions before you go, you'll probably have a much better time. All right, well, thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this or found it educational, informational, entertaining, whatever, give it a thumbs up. Do subscribe if you haven't already. You can watch my entire series. I'll put the link below of my entire hike and some extra videos I have on how I did to prepare and some of the things I've learned since then. So I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you so much for watching.